Hello, welcome to the Comic Book Commentary. I'm Bo Leidig, and this week it's gonna get weird, folks, because we're talking about the Maxx number 5. So let's zoom in and take a closer look. First published in September of 1993, you can see this is a very minimalist cover. However, as you're gonna see once we get into the book, this cover is very indicative of the emotional tone that's being set in this book, and also does a very good job of portraying some of the inner turmoil that Max deals with in his daily life. Story, art, Sam Keith. Swell dialogue, Bill Messner-Loebs. Crap on dream sequence, Dave Feiss. Finishes, Jim Sinclair. Lettering, Mike Heisler. Color, Steve Oliff and Ollie Optics. Logo, Chance Wolf. Film output, Kel-O Graphics. On the first page, it's still quite dark, but we do have a shot of Max through some sort of a watching / observation device as we get a familiar looking bit of text coming from someone off page telling the person operating this observation device to zoom in and move, and then get a good look at Max's claw as we realize that someone we thought may have been gone may be back once again. We then see that Max is curled up on a sofa in Julie's apartment as she tries to stir him awake, saying, "Hey Max, wake up," as the onlooker, who of course is in fact Mr. Gone, who we thought had potentially been killed before, is actually still around and is spying on Max and Julie in Julie's apartment as he continues to command his Izzes to move the looking device around to get better looks at what he wants to see, and wants to, basically just kind of lord over Max and Julie that, he's constantly got them in his sights and is always observing their every move. Julie continues to try and stir Max, stating, every Saturday morning it's the same thing with you. You always fall asleep watching cartoons, and you watch the dumbest cartoons in the world. For instance, you're watching The Crap On in a Hat. And then she states, The Crap On in a Hat teams up with Jean-Paul Sartre to fight nausea. Nausea is the episode that you're watching. And I gotta admit, that reference went completely over my head. I had to look it up. Jean-Paul Sartre is a writer and a philosopher. He's deceased, was a writer and a philosopher and an existentialist and a Marxist who wrote a book called Nausea along with several other books. And, he had a lot of stuff going on in his life. If you're interested, look him up on Wikipedia. It's a pretty long read and more than I can get into here. But that's the joke. The fact that they're teaming up to fight Nausea, which is one of his books, so it's a play on words. And I have to wonder how many people's heads this went over. You're talking about a seriously deep cut by Bill Loebs, and who, by the way, wrote all the dialogue for these books. Considering that on average, the normal range of age for people reading this was probably going to be something like 13 to 18. It seems unlikely that a ton of them would have understood that, but, that's apparently where Bill wanted to go with the joke. Meanwhile, we notice now that the device was a telescope, and it's set up in a building across the street, where Mr. Gone is set up with a bunch of Izzes as they continue to observe. And Mr. Gone even notes, I could blow them both away from here. Of course, I never would, meaning that it's more important to him to be able to torment both Julie and Max, and also, if he does decide that he wants to kill them, to do it face to face rather than, at his leisure from a secret base that he has. He then scolds one of the Izzes for trying to look through the telescope, stating, "Stop doing that. Everyone knows Izzes don't have eyes." The Izz then turns around and sticks its tongue out at Mr. Gone. We then see that Julie finally gives up on trying to wake up Max and says, "Okay, continue to sleep then, big guy. I'll go make us some hot cocoa. Just don't let those cartoons rot your brain. They are really stupid." We then see that Max continues to sleep on as Julie walks away and says, don't fall in. That's all I need is for you to become some kind of stupid cartoon." But then things start to get a little out of control as Max starts to see the head of the doll that the Jungle Queen ripped off. As we see that in the real world, he drops his little crap-on doll, and then also happens to see visions of the face of a rabbit as he believes that his face underneath the mask is in fact that of a rabbit. And things start to get out of control even more as he drifts into a deeper slumber and his dream starts to get pretty wacky as he starts to hear the voice of the Crapon calling to him and speaking totally in rhyme. As we see in his dream sequence, he starts to awaken in a dumpster in an alley as the Crapon continues to just kind of talk to him and lure him into an altered state of consciousness, which we've seen that Max has a hard time, controlling his psyche when he's awake. So I can only imagine that when he's asleep, it's just completely off the rails. We then see Max waking up in a dumpster in a very colorful and cartoony looking world. And this is because his dream sequence is taking place in the cartoon world of the Crapon, who was created by Dave Feiss. Dave Feiss also illustrated all of this dream sequence for the next several pages. This is because Dave actually worked as a professional animator, and Sam wanted this dream sequence to have a very authentic cartoon look to it. So why not hire someone who works professionally on children's cartoons to draw it? It makes sense. As we see Max look around, he starts to realize that something's off. Everything's more colorful. Nothing looks the way it's supposed to. And he's not certain what's going on until he is then contacted by a fish who lives in a bowl that he's suddenly holding. We also see that he's grown his mane that he normally has only in the outback. The fish states, hey, we should probably get out of here before all these guys catch you. They want to rip your mask off. And then Max realizes, holy crap, what's going on? Who are all these guys? The fish explains that they are all of his fears, and everything that he's most afraid of is chasing him down, and they're all named Dave, which is something that's not explained in this issue, but does become relevant way later on. As Max continues to run carrying the fish, he realizes that he can't let these things catch him. He doesn't want his mask taken off. And then, without warning, suddenly he falls through a hole. We then see that the Crapon in a hat shows up and begins to taunt Max, telling him that he actually knows what's under Max's mask. Max, of course, rebukes this, stating, you can't possibly know that, you're just animated. But the Crapon continues to tell him that, he absolutely knows what's under Max's mask, and if he wants to know as well, all he has to do is ask. This implying that, Max himself isn't really certain what he's hiding behind the mask. The Crapon then tells him, I've got this guy here, the straight skinny, he'll help. And then he also has a guy hiding under his hat called Snot. And he also then tells the Max that his fish is dead when Max tries to ask the fish for advice. Then we see the Crapon on some kind of weird flying bicycle as he floats around Max, trying to get him to take his mask off. He even at one point tells Max that his mask is in fact evil and that his fish has wheezed its last wheeze. Max argues back that his mask is not evil, it's a clever disguise that he created so that he could go and do good in the world. The Crapon tells Max that the fish is actually his consciousness, which you have to wonder if this is a way of saying that Max has lost all connection to his consciousness in this dream world state, or if it's also talking about his loss of his consciousness in the real world as well. But Max states that the fish is not dead, that, he's going to continue to fight on as all of the fears named Dave continue to try and chase him down as he tries to get away, running through his dream as they continue in hot pursuit, doing everything that they can to rip his mask off. Max continues to run away as he runs by what looks to be some weird giant brown bubble, and then it explodes, dumping all of its horrible material. And Max states that, he's fearful of what's under his mask because he actually doesn't know what it is. His face is horrible. He knows that, but he doesn't know if it's covered in fur or is, horribly scarred or just some evil monstrosity that looks like a pile of bowels. But he is terrified of exactly what it is that he's hiding under his mask because he just fears that it is so, in fact, just awful and gruesome. As the room begins to fill up with what Max realizes is in fact diet root beer, all of the fears named Dave suddenly have Viking longboats and they're chasing him down. Then Max starts to question, wait a minute, diet root beer, as we see him split between the dream world and what he believes is the real world inside of the dumpster. However, we may recall that when Max fell asleep, he was on Julie's couch, not in a dumpster. So this starts to bring up the question of, how deep into this sequence of dream is Max and how lost is he in this dream state? He then continues to run away from the fears named Dave in his dream, carrying the fish, who has seemingly died. He unfortunately then trips and falls, but manages to protect the fishbowl. However, he's then pounced on by all of the fears as they continue to grab him and claw at him. He tries to fight back and is afraid that if he does happen to die here, that he's also going to die on Julie's couch, which is weird because he remembers here that he's on Julie's couch, but in this previous part of the dream sequence, he was stuck between a cartoon world dumpster and a quote unquote real world dumpster. So we see that Max's, unconscious state is kind of out of control here, and he's, struggling to keep some grip on any type of normality. Max then regains consciousness in his dream and realizes that he's been tied to a stake by the fears named Dave, and they've also tied his fishbowl to a stake next to him, and the fish is now completely dead and is just a skeleton. And Max realizes that he needs to escape and is worried about his fish, but realizes also that if he breaks the glass, he can use it to cut the ropes, which he immediately does. He then comes to the conclusion that the only way to stop this is to face his fears and take the mask off and look what's underneath. So he rips the mask off of his face, turns it around and looks at it, and then states that what's underneath it is beans, as we see a lot of bean pods just start falling out from the mask. And Max says to himself, man, it's really odd. Why would anyone keep beans under a mask like this? As the beans continue to fall out of the mask, we see that suddenly the dream transitions into the outback, but not in the way that Max has seen before, as it's very desolate and monotone in color. He's then confronted by the child version of the Jungle Queen, aka Julie, who says, you shouldn't be here. And Max at this point is nothing more than a skull. He asks who she is, and she states, I'm the part of the Jungle Queen that can't grow up. I'm kind of developmentally stunted. He then asks why he looks like an Eagles album cover, and she's like, you're dead. And he's like, well, I kind of figured. But then we see him transition back to his Outback form with the Jungle Queen, and he asks, if I'm supposed to be protecting the Jungle Queen, why am I not supposed to be here? She then states, well, this is a holy place. I don't even come here. This is the part of the Jungle Queen's emotional portrayal and psyche that she kind of keeps hidden from everyone else. It then goes back to Max and the Jungle Queen, but it says, go back, you're not supposed to be here. You've dragged us into the Ulrich dimension. As we see, they're now these horrible, disfigured, melting monsters. And then suddenly they're back to normal again. And, Max just says, what were you saying? And Julie, aka the Jungle Queen, says, about what? And then suddenly Max is back in Julie's apartment and he says, I then woke up and I guess I had too many cartoons and Pez. And Julie, who's walking back towards him, says, I think you OD'd. We then get a 2-page splash of Max still curled up on the couch as he realizes that he keeps seeing visions of the doll that the Jungle Queen ripped the head off of, and also visions of what might be underneath his mask as we once again see the face of the rabbit. Julie then tries to kind of get through to Max and says, just because that freak nearly killed us is no reason to fixate on him. She's talking about Mr. Gone, of course. And she also says, just because you imagine that, you may look like a rabbit in this, imaginary savage world of yours doesn't mean that you actually have a rabbit's face underneath your mask. And then she states, it's classic, Max. You imagine yourself as a godlike figure and an avenger in this fantasy world because you have so little power in the real world. But then she states, it's, what's wrong with that? Everybody needs a place to escape to, a place where they feel safe, a place where they feel like they have the ability to have more control than they do, and starts to speak in a way that implies that she may not just be talking about Max in this instance. And she says that everybody needs someplace that's safe from reality, as we see her standing alone in the dark apartment with Max as he continues to curl up on her sofa. We then get another 2-page image of Max in his outback form with the large mane headdress, sitting alone in a grass field. As Julie states, we all need somewhere to hide. She's like, I know there's things that I would like to hide from. Max then responds and states, I can feel my mask crawling. He then states, please make it stop, as he pleads with Julie. And she just says shh and tells him, it'll be okay. It's going to be okay, as she comforts him while Max seemingly has a complete psychological breakdown on her couch and is struggling with incredible amounts of mental anguish and torment as we reach the final page of the story of this issue. We then get into Max Tracks, obviously the letter section where readers can write in and ask questions of Sam Kieth, to which most of he does not respond in any serious manner. And at this point, a lot of the people writing in aren't writing serious letters either. They're just being goofy with him. However, at the beginning here, Sam does state that he wants to make sure everyone who submits artwork is basically just submitting black and white pen and inks because those are the easiest ones to print, and that they're not going to print full color images. However, he breaks that rule immediately in this issue. But he does state, like, hey, I'm serious. We're not going to print full color. This one was just really good. He also brings up the point here to make sure that everyone knows that Bill Loebs is the one who is coming up with all of the dialogue. Despite the fact that Sam is the writer of the overall story, the actual dialogue between characters is written primarily by Bill Loebs. And, he's the one responsible for making it so, unique and different in the way that the characters speak with one another. We see a cool image right here of Max and Julie with a bunch of Izzes and Mr. Gone, and then a cool little close-up headshot of Mr. Gone looking really wild and crazy and vicious. And there's a lot of interesting letters in this section, some of them weird, some of them actually pretty, I guess, insightful in some ways, as we're going to see as we continue. On the next page, we get a cool little cartoon drawing of an Iz, and also one of the Outback Max holding Mr. Gone by his necklace, as we see him in his boxers with the bubbles, and Max just saying, I said no bubbles, as he threatens to stab Mr. Gone with his claw. And a lot of the letters in this month's section were in response to a letter that was written and published in issue number 3 from one Heidi McDonald, where she criticized Sam a lot about the way he portrayed Julie and the outfits that she wears, and, kind of stating a lot of stuff about, where she felt Julie sat in what in 1993 was modern feminism and that type of thing. And a lot of people were kind of giving pushback on her opinions, many people disagreeing with her. Many of them other female readers, as they stated that, they didn't really feel as though Julie's outfits were, so outlandish or anything. And that, one guy made an interesting point in a really long letter that I cannot believe Sam published the entirety of, where he basically states, he felt that Heidi's opinions were actually very sexist themselves, because it almost seemed the way that she was stating it that, any power that Julie has only exists because it was bestowed upon her by men, when in reality, she is, on a level playing field with men, and the power that she has is power that she's earned from her own actions and was not bestowed upon her by anyone else. And it was an interesting read. It was an interesting argument. It's too long to go into in this video, but I suggest if you have the opportunity to thumb through a number 5, an original number 5, because I don't know if the reprints actually reprinted any of the letter sections. You should read that entire letter. It's really, a well thought out, I don't even want to call it an argument, but a disagreement and a discussion in terms of, trying to understand exactly what you think that character of Julie represents. And, it's interesting to see how different the opinions people had were about what Julie represents. And on the 5th and 6th pages of letters, which is admittedly more letters than I feel should have been in this issue, we see another pencil illustration and the full color illustration submitted by two guys by the name of Aaron Ricks and Steve Furchow. I don't know if I'm saying that right, Steve. If I'm not, I apologize. But man, look how cool this is with Mr. Gone standing in the darkness with the moon behind him. He's got one hand glowing with magic with all these izzes coming out from underneath his cloak. This is super cool. And in all honesty, I kind of wish that if Sam was going to print this, instead of doing 6 pages of letters and putting this at the bottom of one of them, he just gave this a full 2-page splash, because I really think that this submission actually deserves it. And this is something that we saw Todd McFarlane do in a lot of issues of Spawn, where he would just give full pages dedicated to reader submitted artwork to, obviously, I guess you could say pad out the book a little bit. But in many cases, I think it was really well deserving. And in this case, I believe that this is absolutely deserving of it. This is such a cool image, and I really wish that they had given us like a full 2-page spread of it. I think it would have been well worth the real estate of this book to cut out, especially some of the goofball, like jokey letters, and give us this instead. We then get an advertisement for the Maxx trading cards from Topps, which I really want to find a full set of one day. I would love to have these, especially because 40 of them are unique artwork, and there's a lot of like little world building type of factoids on a lot of these cards that you're only going to get from these cards. So to me, it'd be really interesting to read all of those. We then get an advertisement for Vanguard number 3. Now, as of this moment, I have not gotten into any issues of Vanguard because I haven't reached the point of Savage Dragon where Vanguard shows up yet. But when I do, I will start getting into issues of Vanguard. I don't have all of Vanguard, but I have some of it. And, I plan on making videos about all those issues that I do have and trying to find all the rest. So stay tuned. And if you want to know more about Savage Dragon, you can check out my Savage Dragon playlist. We then get an advertisement for Shadowhawk 3. I have not made it that far into the Shadowhawk books that I have just yet. I'm still on the original Shadowhawk miniseries. But if you'd like to know more about Shadowhawk, please feel free to check out my Shadowhawk playlist. I will be continuing to do my retrospective look on Shadowhawk, along with a lot of the other early Image titles. We then get an advertisement for Savage Dragon number 6, Freak Force Exit. Now, again, I have not reached the point where the Freak Force has separated into its own ongoing series, or I haven't gotten to Savage Dragon number 6 yet either, but I will, and I do have the entire run of Freak Force because I love Freak Force, and I will be doing a complete rundown on all of Freak Force going forward when I get to it. Again, it's more of a stay tuned. And once again, if you'd like to know more about Savage Dragon, check out my Savage Dragon playlist. And that was the Maxx number 5. And I got to be honest, folks, for a long time, I really didn't like this issue. This was one of my least favorite issues of the Maxx. But going back and rereading it now, with the retrospective of having read the entire series at this point, I actually appreciate this book a lot more. This issue actually is doing a lot of foreshadowing and laying a lot of groundwork for story points that we don't get a payoff for more than a dozen issues, like years in terms of when these were actually being published. And the fact that, Sam would have the foresight to, basically plan a story that far in advance and stick with it is pretty admirable and impressive, in my opinion. The first time you read this book, when you don't have the context, it just seems super weird and outrageous. And don't get me wrong, it is both of those things, but you also there's so much of it that just goes over your head. You just don't realize what exactly it is that you're seeing in that dream sequence, and the insight that we're getting into Max as a character and his psychological profile, and the actual pain and anguish that he deals with in, having such severe mental illness and being aware that he has it too. He's not completely unaware of his mental state being off. Like, he knows every day that, he's struggling with this, and he's not necessarily always certain that he has a grip on the reality that's around him. And we also see, insight into Julie again, where, when she's telling Max about having a fantasy world that he can escape to being okay, it's almost as if she's trying to justify the choices that she's making in trying to escape some of her own past trauma as well. And it's a really well-written book that I just did not appreciate as much as I should have when I first read it. But then again, these are just my opinions. Your opinions may vary. You might think that this book is terrible and it's goofy and makes no sense, and that, despite what it might be trying to lay the groundwork for, it failed miserably at. And if that's the case, it's okay, because everyone's entitled to their own opinions. If you enjoyed today's video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.